Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the show. Continuing our series on leveraging events to grow your business in 2026, we're joined today by Tiffany McQuaid. Tiffany, so glad to have you here.
So great to be here. Thank you for having me.
Tiffany McQuaid, for those of you new to her world, is the Regional Director of Strategy and Performance at SERHANT and author of the INth degree, How to Stand Out by Going All In. A nationally recognized marketing strategist and business speaker, Tiffany is known for her innovative INth degree approach to real estate and business, building success through heart-centered service, creative community engagement, and her signature belief, if we can believe in something great, we can achieve something great. I love that message. And speaking of community engagement, Tiffany's case study today looks at how she built a multi-million dollar real estate brokerage in a crowded market through creative community events like a concert series, stone crab festivals, which I've never even heard of. So I'm so excited to talk about that, and safari themed open houses that created brand awareness and meaningful relationships for her business, and specifically how she actually generated $22 million in real estate sales in her first year of implementing and hosting these community based events. So, Tiffany, I am stoked. I have so many questions for you. But before we get into the case study details, I would love to hear your Cubicle to CEO story. What was that catalyst that launched you into full time entrepreneurship that led you to where you are today?
Well, I think there's always like a defining moment, right? And it, for me, became when I was first getting licensed in real estate 23, almost 24 years ago. I kind of knew from day one that I wanted to have my own brokerage someday. And it was because I'd sat back and watched what was going on in our market in that industry and realized, I think there's room here. There's room to do things a little differently. There's room to not be status quo, so to speak. So that's really ultimately what stimulated my ability to get licensed and then get my broker's license. And 10 years in is when I decided to ultimately go on my own. And by that point, I had done enough research because throughout those entire 10 years, I was doing research with everything that I was doing. So, keeping track of open houses, how many attendees I had, how many were from the community with which I was opening, how many from outside, just paying attention to everything the other brokerages were doing, what was going on in the town, and how could I fill voids. And my mind always went there. And I think that's entrepreneurial excellence is when you're trying to solve a problem or you're trying to fill a void where you perceive one to be, right? So that was essentially my defining little moment.
Well, so exciting to know that's kind of your analytical mind, because our listeners love hearing all of those details, the little data points that maybe other people miss, and you notice those patterns and get to use that as a launching pad for your creativity. By the way, one other thought I just wanted to share. Of course, I'm sure you get this a lot in your role as regional director of strategy and performance, but I, of course, loved both seasons of Owning Manhattan, but especially the second season. And so I'm sure it's really fun for you, even though you're not based in the New York office. I'm sure it's fun to be part of an environment or a company that really encourages creativity. Do you have any future appearances on that show that we may get to look out for you?
Oh, well, that's a sweet question. I was actually in season 2, a few little random spots
Oh,
you'd see me, in Miami, but, that to me is a true reason, one of the true reasons why I transitioned my independent brokerage and merged with Ryan Serhant was because we both functioned very innovatively. And our intent was to do and create a situation that it was real estate done differently. It was traditional real estate, but with some Shazams of different things around. So that is ultimately what attracted me and allowed me to be open minded about making that decision because it wasn't something initially that I ever thought that I would do. It just seemed like the right choice at the time. So here we are.
I love that too because I think leverage is such a key component of entrepreneurship that those who
Right.
understand leverage really go further. And so I think it's so smart that you combined resources with someone that you saw was doing things differently. And it's only amplifying the amazing work you're already doing. So to set the stage for our listeners, I want to go back to I guess like the genesis of why you started creating these events. You had just started your independent real estate brokerage. This was when you were still in Naples, Florida, and you had a hard challenge, right? You only had $17,000 in your name, and you were competing against these really long established national franchises with massive marketing budgets. So you needed a unique way to stand out. And this, the community events, was really your breakthrough strategy. But my question to you, Tiffany, is when I first read this, I was like, oh, that's so interesting because in person events are typically very expensive and run in the tens of thousands of dollars or more budget wise to host. And so when you were thinking, okay, I don't have a lot of funding to my name and I don't have a lot of recognition to my name, how did you know that you could pull off an event with minimal funds?
Well, to give a little backstory, it kind of helped that that was my background, which was marketing, promotion, and special event management that I did in Ohio before I moved 23 years ago to Naples. So, that's really what I knew. Real estate essentially was new to me. It was something that I was very passionate about. I was one of those crazy people that would go to open houses on Sunday for fun. So, I was able to combine what I knew in terms of event management and combine it with what I loved, which was real estate. So, what we did then was go in and myself and my team that I had put together, kind of went through and taught them, everything that I knew. And, what we were able to do was really magical in that we were able to gather the community for something different, something unique, something great, get everybody in for to get that kind of special feeling, whether it was music related or stone crab related or just a taste or a sampling of the town, which we've done as well. But pulling everybody in and then being able to ride on that elevated feeling of enthusiasm and excitement, and then be able to position us as a company in such a way that was different and unique. So instead of us just having a booth, a real estate booth, as most people would do, we were putting the sweat equity in to put the events together. Our company color at that time was red, so everything was branded red. We had pulled sponsors in for all the events, of which we were one also, in exchange for sweat equity as opposed to cash outlay. And then, of course, we were the only real estate office, that we set up for these events. And we did booths and things in a unique and different and remarkable way that caused people to come up and have conversation and to talk, which cultivated then in a huge list of customers, potential customers, clients, and in addition to that, our agents then were given VIP tickets to invite all of their customers and or potential ones to come and take part in the event, bring their friends. And, then it just became a connection point, not only for the community, but also for our customer base that was different and unique. And being able to connect with people outside of what's standard and customary for the real estate industry.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to circle back to the booths and how you made those unique because I think booths can be done really well or really poorly. So I'm glad you brought that up. We'll definitely circle back to that point. I'm just curious, this first iteration of Rockin' on the Bay, which was your free concert series, right? In the waterfront area where you lived and where your office was located. That very first year, what budget had you set aside to make this happen for your company?
Well, when we started Rockin' on the Bay, I mean, we had 0 budget. And again, I was just starting the company, so it was a little different animal. But what we did do was we were able to obtain a few small sponsors that believed in us. One of them was a auto dealership. And so we were able to tie in with them and just keep the budget very, very small. And it was literally talking to, we had opened a concert series with a local band,
Mm,
followed by, we did the series, it was kind of a tribute series. So, followed by a much larger tribute band.
mhm,
And so in that format, we were able to go to them and, we're in real estate, so we negotiate all the time, right? But to be able to negotiate, look, we want to start this series. Here's our intent. Here's our plan. This is what we're going to do. Can you work with us on this first one or the second one or, what have you? Can you work with us a little bit? And once we get the series going, we'll make sure that you're well taken care of. And that's essentially what we did. And it was legit just a ton of sweat equity and doing the best that we could at the time and like concessions and what have you. That was a revenue gen for us, that allowed us to keep moving forward with the concert. And then as it got more and more traction, because we were doing it weekly at that time, in the first go around, we got a ton of press. No media is bad media, as Barbara Corcoran has always told me. No media is bad media unless you murder, kill someone, do drugs, or steal. And she's like, so take it as a good thing, because right at the beginning there was some contentious media because some of the homeowners didn't like the noise and blah blah blah.
mm,
But we were able to ride that wave, and what that media did, it was kind of like Naples' version of Footloose. Oh my
mm.
gosh, they wanna play music and let people dance in downtown, you know? So that's what the media coverage was. Well,
Right.
so what it did was it brought so many people out saying, "What is this that's going on that we keep seeing in the papers?" So we went from a couple thousand, which was more than we thought at the first concert, to 7, 10, 12,000 people over the course of time, And so it was just insane. But what it did was it allowed us the opportunity then to really not only get our name out, but we were able to help build the entire complex. The commercial tenants on the first floor, we were able to help fill some of the vacancies and, it re-energized everybody for the space. So it was a good thing overall for sure.
That is so cool, and I love to see all of the collaboration, like you said, the community thread that tied in not just inviting the community to take part in the concert series, but really all the community partnerships that you were building, like you said, behind the scenes with other sponsors, with other vendors, with other just people invested in making things happen for the community. I'm wondering, like, with those initial sponsors, again, with an untested, unproven concept, right? At least at first, I know you said sweat equity was a huge portion of what you were bringing to the table, but how did you pitch the ROI to them? Like for them, was it like truly just like be an early adopter and get in front of thousands of people, or was it more than brand awareness that you were positioning to them as the draw for that buy-in?
Well, that's actually a very fantastic question because obviously at the onset we were turned down more than we were agreed to. So, because people were like, "Oh yeah, sure," I mean, it's a downtown area. There's a lot of hoops you have to go through to be able to execute and deliver something of that sort, right?
Right.
So there was a lot of, "Oh, well, we'll wait and see,"
Mm,
which was good, but good and bad. But we stayed very steadfast in the mission and the intention and what our desire was and what we knew or believed the outcome to be. So when you hold steadfast in that conviction, it's much harder for people to say no to you, when you're confident in that stance. But even when they do say no to you, when you're confident in that stance, you can always still reopen the conversation with proven results, right?
Mm,
So by time we got through week 1, week 2, it was like everybody we circled back to everybody, and all of a sudden now they're all clamoring to be involved, you know? And I think that's what happens sometimes is and probably in any kind of sales or, situation of that sort, is that people can feel the rejection if you're not used to it. I mean, we're used to it in this industry, but if you're not used to it, you can keep yourself down about it as opposed to springing back up. And when the opportunity presents itself, revisit it. Don't take it off the
mm.
table just because they said no once. There's always a way. There's always a way.
I couldn't agree more, and I'm just thinking even to my own experience of getting sponsorships for events specifically, like, nobody ever wants to be the first, right? For anything really, and so if you can get those early adopters in and build out some proof of concept, there is such an easier path the second, the third, the fourth time you go back for that buy-in, and so I love that you gave that encouragement. For the actual sponsorship packages, I know our listeners really like to understand, like, tactically, if they hear an idea that they wanna apply in their own businesses, what exactly were, like, the deliverables that you were offering them? Was it like, "Hey, if you buy in at this certain amount per week for this concert series, you get a booth every concert?" Was it, like, their branding across the different displays or materials being created? Like, what else besides those 2 things did you cover in that package that you were building?
I think that the beauty of doing something new, especially, is that you have a little more flexibility in terms of what you can package based on the vendor that you're going to meet with. And I think that really was our key to success is we did not put together sponsor packages and say, okay, here you are, blanket, across all of our commercial businesses in town, the same collateral. No, what we did was
To hear the rest of this episode and unlock weekly subscriber only content and community access, join us as a premium subscriber at cubicletoceo.co/podcast. The link is below in our show notes.